You are about to enter a great adventure.
This is Strutting from Gorilla.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of SFG. I am Mikey Cash, and Big Vito is here with me as always. Now, today we're going to be spotlighting the career of Chris Jericho. We're going to be covering our impressions from our first time seeing Y2J grace the wrestling ring, our favorite rivalries, our matches, iterations of his character from over 30 years of his career. And we're also going to talk about what is his legacy once he hangs up the boots in professional wrestling. So, we're very excited to talk about this with you here today. But before we break the walls down on this episode, please scan the QR code down in the corner so that you can connect with us on all of our socials. And if you feel like it, leave us a 5-star rating and review. Now, Vito, we were talking about the Ayatollah of rock and rolla. I don't know about you, but I am a recovering Jerichoholic. So I'm very excited about this episode. What about you?
Listen, Mikey Cash, you stupid idiot. Okay, Y2J is phenomenal. I am very excited about this episode.
Yeah.
I think he's had a great career. I think it's been very long, and I think we're going to talk about why and how he's reinvented himself a bunch and how he's really good at that. But I'm very excited about this episode. I think I remember Chris Jericho when he was on WCW. I remember when he came to WWF, and it was my favorite moment, I think, of all time when he came back or debuted in WWF. So there's a lot that we're going to have to pack in here. And his career isn't over. I think this might be one of the first spotlights that we have done where we either the person's career wasn't over or we didn't know if it was ending yet. I think he's at the twilight of his career, for sure. But lots to be said here. So I will let you kind of start it off.
Well, I mean, let's just dive into our first impressions, I think.
Okay.
Like going into that the first time we either heard about him or the first time you can remember seeing him on the screen. When I think of that and how my fandom of Jericho started, I have the countdown in the background because I remember watching Raw and I would get these countdown to the millennium little countdowns, like these little vignettes throughout Raw. And I remember being in school and people were talking about who they thought it was, and everybody had ideas about it. And then I remember being kind of like I remember the mystery of who people thought it was going to be. I think I forgot what some of the rumors out there were. I should probably have looked that up, like who people thought the Millennium Man was going to be versus who it ended up being. But I'm ashamed to say this, but I didn't get to see his debut live when it happened. So like as much as I can remember, like this is technically my first real I guess exposure to Jericho without knowing it was these Millennium countdowns, but I missed that. And so I was able to like catch some of his stuff later on, but we didn't always have cables, like I wasn't always able to watch Raw. So there was a period of time we didn't have it. By the time things were back on and I was like able to watch all of it again, it was November of 99. So the first match I remember watching with him fully, like live as it was happening, was Survivor Series 99, which is famous for a lot of other things, but this is one of Jericho's kind of bigger moments in his career because I think it was the first time he won a title, I'm pretty sure, and he faced China, and it was an Intercontinental Championship match. And honestly, I didn't think too much of it. It was a fine match, But I remember at the time, I was like, all right, so Jericho's all right. You know, he's got some cool trunks. I remember the red trunks with like the barbed wire, and I always thought those were so badass. And it only got better since then. And I was able to eventually watch like the full clip at the time when Jericho interrupted The Rock, which to me at that time in 1999, The Rock was like God to me. So like the fact that Jericho would interrupt The Rock, I was fully bought into the kayfabe of it at the time. Like I wasn't watching it like I do now, and I was like, how dare he do that? Like what an idiot! I can't believe he thought that he could go one on one with the Great One. You know, I would talk like The Rock for The Rock. You know, so that
Yeah.
tells you where my head was at that time. So I think maybe I was intimidated by Jericho because of how much I love The Rock and identified with that. But yeah, that was my first. It's a tangential way of saying it, but yeah, that was my first exposure to Chris Jericho, and that changed over time, obviously, and grew to really love him and really kind of cherish what he's brought to the business. But that was my first time. What about you?
Yeah, so I would think that is probably going to be a lot of people's first time,
Yeah, yeah.
but mine was before that.
Mm-hmm.
I watched him in WCW. I was the guy that would always flip channels back and forth, and there was a period of time where I was watching WCW more than WWE or WWF. Um, but I would always flip channels, and I would always, there'd be things that hooked me, and I would just stay. And Jericho was always one of them. I remember what was different about WCW at the time is they had an unbelievable like cruiserweight division. They're smaller guys. I mean, WWE was focused on like the bigger guys, and I think it was right around the time you had like Austin, Bret Hart was there, and so it was really unique because they had this cruiserweight division that they would bring in a lot of luchadors, which again, you didn't see a lot of that on WWF at the time. And so I saw Jericho, I saw Eddie Guerrero, I saw Dean Malenko, I saw Juventud Guerrero, and like if you look at their cruiserweight division, it was loaded with people,
Mm-hmm.
and they would always be on Monday Nitro, or Thunder, and so I'd watch it, and I always saw Jericho, and I remember first seeing him, and I was like, you're a kid, so you always try and compare like WWF to WCW. And I always thought that Jericho was like their Shawn Michaels. He was like a good looking dude, smaller guy, but man, he could wrestle. And the matches he would put on were unbelievable. And then I would hear him get on the microphone, and it wasn't very often, but he was compelling to listen to. And I think at that
Yeah,
point he was the Lionheart Chris Jericho, right?
right.
So I always really liked him. And yeah, I remember he had that stupid little ponytail that he did it in WWE or WWF at the time.
Yeah.
But he was like very flamboyant. Like I remember him being like very, very flamboyant in WCW. And he was always on TV. Like, and it wasn't a long period of time, but I just remember seeing him a lot. And they had Billy Kidman, like just some great matches that you would see all the time. And I remember being like, man, this guy, his walls of, I don't think it was walls of Jericho. What do you call it? The lion tamer, his finisher. At the time, I was like, oh, this is such a ripoff of like the sharpshooter, even though it was different. And it was more pronounced like in
Yeah.
WCW with the lion tamer, where it was more arched. But
He did
anyways,
it way differently.
yeah. So there are two things that stuck out in his WCW days that I really remember a lot. Number one was his feud with Dean Malenko, and we've talked about this in the past, but
Yeah.
it's still one of my favorite segments of all time, where Jericho is making fun of Dean Malenko being a man of 1,000 holds, and he goes, "I'm gonna read off. I'm the man of 1,004 holds," and he reads off. He gets this giant list. He starts reading off every hold, and then they
Yeah.
go to commercial break, and they come back, and he's still reading the holds, and it was
Yeah.
so good. So that's one thing I remember. And then the second thing I remember, and I think this is really when I started to be like, all right, this guy, I can see how he's going to be a bit of a star, is his feud against Goldberg that like never actually really happened. And like he basically was by himself trying to feud against Bill Goldberg, and Goldberg really like I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, like backstage did not want anything to do with Chris Jericho. But Jericho just kept going at him. And he like came out with his security guard one time. He had a shirt that said, yeah, Chris Jericho 1, Goldberg 0. And like he would just keep prying at him.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he had some great television moments and was probably at that time one of their best younger talents. I would put Eddie Guerrero in there too. And they weren't utilizing him. And he wasn't going anywhere. And so he had the opportunity to leave and come to WWF at the time, and he did. And I think it was the best move he ever made. I don't think Eric Bischoff, I mean, he had a lot of flubs that he had. And I think Jericho is one of his biggest flubs, along with, Guerrero, Benoit, those guys. So he makes that debut, like you said, and I remember it. And I was like, oh, I know this guy. I was pumped when he came in, but like you said, the way he came in was, I don't know if he came in another way that it would have worked as good as it did. They threw him right in there with The Rock, like you said, and he held his own against The Rock on the microphone. And it was very, very entertaining. And it was the first time you saw a guy that could do that.
That is such, being able to like watch it again. And I also was able to watch, he did that interview with Austin, like when he was like, which was also kind of wild, right? Like we had a guy who was clear in AEW, and then he was on the WWE network in a podcast, which was, I don't know why they ever did that. They've never done it again, but I don't know what was going on at the time that led them to say like, sure, let's do this. But either way, because he was on there, he was able to talk about that debut segment with The Rock. And you hear a guy that's so grateful for that opportunity at that time because he knew what it meant. Like Jericho knew exactly what was on the line if that segment didn't go the way it was supposed to.
100%.
And if he got, he could have gotten eaten alive by Rock.
Yeah.
Rock, he talks about how during that promo, he kind of goes on this like 2 or 3 minute long little diatribe. Jericho does. And he says, do you realize like how big it was at that time to do that to The Rock and not have him interfere and not have him interject in the middle of it?
Right.
That Rock sat there and took it the whole time and then rebutted. He didn't cut him off at the knees, that, proverbially, so I thought it was so interesting to me to hear him talk about it in that way. Because it was a great debut, and it was talk about wanting to make an impact. You do it with interrupting one of the biggest superstars at the time. Man, and like you said, he held his own, and he threw a couple of good shots at Rock, and those two have always, that you kind of saw the foundation be set for the kind of rivalry the two of them had over the next couple of years. It was fantastic.
I think here's the thing. When he was in WCW, kind of his niche was like stealing the spotlight. Like that's the best way I could describe it. Like he'd always come in and try and steal the spotlight. And I think that was good for his character. It was very unique. It was very heelish, but it was like babyface heelish. Like it was so funny that it became more babyface than heel, even though he was being a heel. I would equate it a lot to some degree of what MJF does today, right? Yeah. Like it's similar to that, but not as condescending, like not as dark as MJF. And so when he came in and did that with The Rock, it fit what he kind of did in WCW at a larger scale. And you're right. It could have gone very sour, and it didn't, and it worked very well, and he held his own. And I just remember being like, oh, I like this guy. And I always liked him. And, it really, because he came in the way he did, it propelled him. And it was even more unique because at that time, the rivalry between WCW and WWF was the biggest it had ever been. And so, like, to have a WCW guy come in and then all of a sudden get right in the spotlight with The Rock, I don't think it went over well with a lot of the talent because they're fighting for their lives against WCW, right? Like, it's life or death at that point for them. And I remember stories of like Triple H hating Chris Jericho at the beginning and just really being a jerk to him, along with other guys, I'm sure. I just remember the Triple H piece because he was such a WWF guy. And I get that, right? Like, I get that piece to some degree at that point. Like, you're bitter rivals and you got this guy coming over, stealing your spotlight who was originally trying to basically take your career away. So I could get that. But I will say this. I did hear a really funny story about, and this may put some stuff into perspective. I think Jericho and Vince McMahon had a very unique relationship. There was a story I heard that Jericho was doing something kind of late at night and they had to fly back, and it was Jericho, Austin, Triple H, and Vince McMahon, and they were all flying on the same flight. And it was late at night and they all like were texting each other, and Jericho was supposed to get a ride to the airport with them. And he shows up and he calls them and they had already left. And Vince McMahon's like, "Oh, where are you? We're at the airport. We're waiting for you." And he's like, "You son of a bitch. You were supposed to wait for me." So he gets in the car, goes to the airport, gets on the jet, and they're flying back and everyone else is like sleeping, and he's hanging out with Vince McMahon, listening to like AC/DC and some rock albums and whatever. And like, they had that like love relationship. So then they're flying in. They get in at like 4:30 in the morning, and they've had some drinks on the plane. And Vince goes to Jericho, goes, "Hey, I'm gonna go to the gym. You want to join me?" And Jericho goes, "No, I'm not joining you. It's 4:30 in the morning. I have to be up at 6:30 to do this like promo thing." And Vince goes, "No, you got to come to the gym." Jericho goes, "I'm not going to the gym." Goes to bed, wakes up at 6:30 and gets a text message from Vince McMahon with a picture of him working out at the gym, being like, "See, I would never ask you to do something I wouldn't do myself. Get your ass to the gym." And it, to me, that's like it's a weird loving relationship, but I think that's kind of the relationship they had, where Vince would give him a hard time, but Jericho would take it, but also give it back to him a bit and not just like succumb to the master, And I can see how, after listening to that story, I could see how that transpired throughout his career, where I feel like Vince always respected him, but like always held him down a bit, where he was never The Rock or never Stone Cold. But I think he also did have this respect for him. I mean, look at it this way. He beat The Rock and beat Stone Cold to become the first ever unified champion. I mean, that's one hell of during their peak, that's one hell of an accolade.
Yeah. It's huge. Listen, he talked about it for like 15
and he should.
years.
He should.
Absolutely, you should. At that time, what that mean, like, people may not fully understand what it meant in the wrestling culture as it stood at that time to do something like that.
Yeah,
that was a big deal. And the fact that he did it in the same night, that's huge. Is that kind of getting into our favorite matches or rivalries? I feel like they kind of go hand in hand, right? Like, so I feel like that's right up there, because Austin and Rock were very important rivals for him. The development of his career, especially in when you think about the establishment of him as that undisputed champion. And I know we're getting a little ahead in the timeline here, but who cares?
Yeah, no, but I would also say, Mikey, like, he went from a mid-carder in WCW to being pushed into kind of the main as a main eventer in WWE. And again, I said this before, but that doesn't happen. Usually Vince would bury guys that come over from WCW, and he held the test of time. So not only was he getting his first main event push in some degree, but it was with another company that was his rival, and that doesn't happen. So the pressure on him, I can imagine, was like, all right, I got my shot. I'm not gonna fumble it here. And that's got to be a big spot to be in. So to be put in those rivalries with Triple H, The Rock, Stone Cold right away, I mean that's one hell of a start to your career in WWE.
Right? And then think about some of the rivalries he had. So he had those rivalries, and you think of, you know, yeah, his WCW time, and he had like the Dean Malenko was a fun one because it's one of the funniest promos he ever cut, and it
Yeah,
kind of put him on the map in terms of promo wise to me because I wasn't watching WCW at the time, but I remember hearing about that, and
yeah,
all of my friends were talking about it. But think about, you know, yeah, Dean Malenko, but he also had some like great stuff going on with like Eddie Guerrero as well. Those some of their first like matchups in that way. Uh, I don't know if you ever watched. I never got to see any of his like Japan stuff, but I heard that there was good stuff with Benoit there too when they were both
yep.
in like those New Japan Cups.
Mhm.
So like the Super Junior. So I mean, the guy already had a resume even coming into WCW and then ECW, right?
Yeah,
Like
I
let's
was gonna
not
say.
forget that. And I know I'm jumping around here, but it's like, yeah, I feel like Celine Dion. It's all coming back to me now, and it's just everything. All these like memories are popping up of the Lionheart, Chris Jericho, and his match with I think it was Lance Storm.
Yep.
Um, like, listen, he had some good stuff going on over there, and I I I think about I because this is personal, right? So we talked about this more in a bigger sense, but for me, when I think of some of my favorite rivalries that I've been able to watch from him,
Hmm.
you know me already, so you already know my number one at the top is The Rock
Yeah,
because I think they matched up so well together from a charisma standpoint and they had fantastic ring chemistry. The
yeah.
Rock was never known as like this having technical prowess, but the man knew how to sell. And when he had an opponent like Jericho, man, those guys like everybody talks about Rock and Austin having great chemistry, but underrated, like right there at number two for me, Rock and Jericho had some bangers. No Mercy 2001. I would challenge anybody to go back and watch that match and tell me that you don't think that's a classic.
Yeah.
Go to, their match at Vengeance, then their match at Royal Rumble in 2002. Jesus, I could go on and on. I wish those guys fought longer, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But that was one of my favorite rivalries, especially the promos. Those backstage segments on Raw, man, when they were just going tit
So
for
good.
tat and then they were stealing each other's catchphrases.
So good.
Oh my God. It was so good. So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. No, it was all great stuff. I mean, I would tell you that Jericho is probably one of the, I don't want to call him underrated because I think he is definitely had a career that doesn't seem underrated. But when you compare him to like Rock, Austin, all those guys, I feel like he's put beneath them. But in reality, like if you look at his matches, there's not really very many bad matches. He can speak on the mic. He's athletic.
Mm-hmm.
He's a rock star. I mean, he has a rock band. He's been acting in movies. He can commentate. Like he can literally do it all, and he does it all very, very well. And I give him so much credit. I really do. But if I'm thinking of top rivalries, because that's what we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
I would put Triple H in there too. And here's why.
Yeah.
When it was the McMahon Helmsley era, and he was going after Stephanie McMahon with all of the like stuff he would say to her, it was hilarious. But I think, and we say this all the time, the best rivalries in wrestling are the ones that are feel the most real. And if Triple H really didn't like Jericho at the time, right? I could understand why it felt like a more organic feud, right? And I love that stuff. I love all of it. And you could throw it in there all the time. It's what made Brett and Sean so great, right? They just really didn't like each other in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that, but that feud with Triple H was great. They had some awesome matches together.
Yep.
And I think it went hand in hand. And it's funny because Jericho was he was a I would you say he was a more of a baby face throughout his career than a heel? Because I would. He had like heel tendencies, kind of like The Rock, very similar in that
Mm-hmm.
aspect, where he wasn't like this, PG era baby face, but he would give people a hard time, and I thought he did a really great job with it. And the stuff with Stephanie McMahon was great. I'm pretty sure like he had a small rivalry with Kurt Angle, which was always good too, because
Mhm.
Angle was great on the mic as well. So those ones, especially in the beginning of his career, were awesome.
It's funny when you talk about it, right? Yeah, you bring up Triple H as one of his great rivals, but I would argue that even greater than that was Stephanie. His
I agree.
rivalry with Stephanie superseded everything else because it kind of led him to having all these matches with these other people that she would
It
like
did.
latch herself onto. So it
Yeah.
was really great, and it also led to some of the best like one of the craziest promos that he would cut on her. I mean, he was scathing
Oh
stuff
yeah.
that I will not be repeating here on this podcast, but the things that they got away with talking about at that time is it's unreal. So and she's talked about it too. On if you listen to Stephanie kind of reminisce about those Jericho segments, she's I mean she's always been a great sport, but man, she was like, yeah, it was brutal the things that that guy was saying to me, and
Yeah.
people were just eating it up and cheering him on as he did it. So to your
Sure.
point, it was very much like he was kind of an asshole, but people liked him much in the same lens that, like you said, that The Rock was. Austin did that too.
Yeah.
Punk is kind of like that. Like all
Yeah.
those, there's a character trait that for some reason people just sort of latch onto, and they're
Yeah.
like, he's not really a bad guy. He's also kind of funny. He's really good too. So I'm gonna cheer him. You know,
Yeah.
and I think that's Jericho.
Yeah, 100%. I think you hit the nail on the head there. And I mean, listen, you could go down the list, and he's wrestled pretty much everybody. You know, as you again, we said this, but I would tell you the fact that he was able to have those rivalries with Austin, which was great in itself. You know, The Rock, Triple H. I think a lot of that really elevated his status at the highest level, at the peak of the Attitude Era.
Hmm.
Um, and so, you know, you start moving forward in his career, and you know, he also, I feel like, brought that what we saw in the cruiserweight division at WCW to WWE in the intercontinental scene. You know, at that time you had him again, the same guys, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, and don't forget China. He had a match against China too.
Hmm.
Um,
That
so
was my first time seeing it.
yeah, yeah, which again, a lot of guys, unfortunately, in the wrestling world, don't want to wrestle a woman because it's a lose-lose situation, and a lot of times because you lose to a woman, you know, it feels like it hurts their character, and you win against a woman and it really doesn't do much for you. So what's the point? And I give him credit for doing that. But yeah, and then he starts to elevate and move on in his career. And you know, I think you've talked about this with me before, but maybe you could talk about it more, is how he reinvents himself throughout his career.
Well, I mean, it's a little bit of honestly, this kind of ties into his legacy because I think he's one of the greatest examples in professional wrestling of being able to stay relevant by constantly taking chances and reinventing yourself. He's not someone who ever got complacent with his spot or where his character was in the story. And sometimes it really worked. I mean, we've seen think about, you know, to use some later examples, right? When he was working with Kevin Owens, which is another great rivalry, and they had some great matches. You know, um the list, and he was doing he was doing all that thing, and like the best friends like gimmick that he had going on. Then he goes to AEW and sort of has a whole bunch of different influences that now he's able to use, right? Because now he's out of the WWE bubble, so now his creativity is even more. It's just I think has free reign. So he has what is it the was it the Painmaker? He was the Painmaker, Chris Jericho.
That
He
was in
had
Japan that it
it was
started.
in Japan when he fought at Wrestle Kingdom with
Yep.
Omega, right? And
Yep.
it, man, I know I can go off on so many tangents, but sorry, I'll try to stay on track. But he does that. He's got the painkiller persona that he kind of brings with him to AEW. Then he's got the Le Champion. gimmick with Inner
was
Circle,
great.
and
Yeah,
he released his own line of champagne, a little bit of the bubbly.
that's right.
Talk about what the guy like how great of like a marketer he was for himself too. I mean, the guy
Yeah,
had his own bottle of champagne he's selling, and it sold out. I tried
yeah,
to buy it when it first came out, and I couldn't get it.
yeah.
Uh, and then he's got when he was the Ocho, and then then he has like the Jericho Appreciation Society, and, and then he's
The
got
learning tree.
the last one, the Learning Tree. Like there's the guy constantly evolved, and yes, not all of them were successful, and I'll admit there were some that I just wasn't really into, right?
Sure.
Like there were parts of like his Inner Circle stuff that I was like, nah, take it or leave it. But
Yeah.
that's the risk of creativity.
Hmm.
It's not always going to land. You're not
Yeah.
going to, you don't bat 1,000 with it when you do stuff like that. But if you're willing to take the shot, I think that's what automatically is going to set you up for longevity in a business like this. And he is a role model for that.
Oh, I agree. And it keeps things entertaining for sure. And what I liked about later in his career is that he's been pulling people up, meaning like he's not doing it himself. He's not focusing on everything is about Chris Jericho. Like if you notice when he's in AEW, what is he doing? Like he's taking all these younger talent and bringing them in with him to try and bring them up, which is like a really respectable thing to do later in your career. And he's done it with multiple people. And, you know, is his in-ring work the same that it was back in the day? No, 100% not. The guy's almost 50 years old if he's not 50 years old. And like he's also, I touched on it briefly, but he has a band that is actually a legitimate band that has music on the radio. And he's well versed in that and playing live gigs, and he's got his own cruise, his own wrestling cruise. Like that's a pretty impressive thing. And again, he uses that cruise to bring up a lot of people, a lot of the younger talent that's there. And so I have a lot of respect for guys that can do that. And it's not the same old song and dance. It's not like, hey, I'm going to come back and do my Hulkamania flex and, the whole thing. And it's always the same gig, or, no offense to Stone Cold, but there was a time where anytime he would come back, it would come back for a little segment, offer someone a beer, stun them, and do his little beer celebration, and that's it. It's like he comes back and he actually adds value and creativity to something new.
Sure.
And I really love that. But going back, so he goes through this WWF career, and there's a point where he takes a hiatus, and then he comes back with his short hair, right? Like his real short hair gimmick, which was weird looking. He was the code breaker. He came back to the whole countdown, Y2J save us, which was cool. Mm-hmm. I think we were all excited to see him back, but it was weird seeing him with short hair. It was very weird to see him with short hair. But it was a whole nother era for him to face superstars he had never seen before. And it was great to have him back. He had a rivalry with CM Punk for a little bit, which I think was pretty awesome. He had the Kevin Owens thing, which was a little bit later on, which also was awesome. And I mean, you could name a bunch of different stuff that was going on at that time. Then, there comes this point where I think the reason he left WWF, and I give him a lot of credit for this, to be honest with you, is the Kevin Owens angle with the best friends thing was probably the hottest thing going. And they were going to put him on in like the mid card of WrestleMania. And he was like, guys, listen, like I'm fine with whatever you want to do, but like, I think we have the most intriguing thing. They said no, blah, 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 blah. They go through this whole rigmarole. And I think he felt a little slighted at that point and decided that, you know what, there comes a time where you have to reinvent yourself. You have to do something different. So he goes to Japan without a contract from WWE and starts doing things differently in there. He meets Kenny Omega, has a rivalry with him there. And a bunch of people that are out there, and they start talking about the formation of AEW, and becomes a huge part of AEW, and probably a large chunk of why they were successful to begin with.
Absolutely. If it
So
wasn't for him being a part of that foundation, maybe it doesn't get off the ground the way
definitely doesn't.
they hoped it would, right?
Definitely
We'll
doesn't.
never know, but it's a safer bet than not that he helped them rather than hurt them.
Yeah, I would say people tuned in because Chris Jericho was on there, and then they found guys like Cody Rhodes who, they knew about, and he had become a whole different person. And then you see Kenny Omega, who you heard about him, but you didn't know who he really was. Like I didn't. People who are hardcore, New Japan watchers did, but I didn't at the time. And you start seeing these new, fresh faces, and I think without him there, I'm not sure people tune in for as long as they did. And he did a really great job. He did a really great job there. But before we go too far into that, one rivalry I forgot that actually is one of my favorites of all time was him versus HBK.
Yeah. Fantastic rivalry.
Yeah, and I said it from the beginning that I thought he reminded me a lot of Shawn Michaels. And, I think Shawn Michaels was I'm not going to call him a mentor, but someone he looked up to in his career.
Mm-hmm.
And he got the opportunity when Shawn Michaels came back to face him at WrestleMania. And I thought it was a really cool match.
Oh, that was one of my favorite matches on that card.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's very much a mentor-mentee kind of thing where it wasn't like, I guess HBK wasn't his mentor, but I remember watching those promo videos, and I do miss those nowadays. We could use a little more. But that promo video where they had like clips where he would say how much Shawn Michaels influenced his career. And so you would be able to see kind of the parallels in his style of work and HBK's. So it was really great to watch them in a match together. And again, talk about guys he had chemistry with. It's a credit to Michaels because that's just what Shawn Michaels did. But at the same time, you had to throw your hat, you have to give it to Jericho because, I mean, he held his own with a legend in the ring, and especially a guy who was coming back from such a severe injury like Michaels was.
Yep.
So, that was a real turning point for Jericho. I'd say that match made him almost more. I know it might sound weird to say. I feel like it made him more than even winning the Undisputed title. As important as that was, if that happened at WrestleMania and he beat Rock and Austin in the same night, I think that just nothing could top that. But that didn't happen there. It happened at a December pay-per-view after Survivor Series.
Yeah.
So this happening at WrestleMania, even though he loses the match, it was a fantastic showcase for Michaels and for Jericho.
Yeah.
Think about what that meant for HBK after all those years. His last WrestleMania was 14, and he's all messed up at that time. To come back out and for this to be such a showing for him and to have the trust in Jericho. Sorry, I get excited. So
I think
I loved it. And
I did too.
They run it back in 2008, and they run it back even. You think, oh, can you do this even better? But now both of them are at different stages, and it's not like that anymore. It's not that mentor-mentee. It's just I'm better than you, and I think they punched didn't they punch his wife or something? Like there was some crazy segment where his wife gets involved and she gets hit. It got really personal. It was great, and that ladder match that they have together is one of the best of all time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, listen, there's a lot of matches you could say that Jericho is in as top tier matches.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree with that one wholeheartedly. But I also think there's parallels to that and what he did in AEW. That's kind of why I brought it up. Like if you look at his rivalry with MJF, it was kind of similar, right? Mentor-mentee type thing with MJF. And I would tell you that Jericho helped elevate both Cody Rhodes and MJF into like this main eventer in AEW. And if it wasn't for
I
that,
agree.
I'm not sure that they get elevated so quickly. And he had both a great rivalry against MJF, but then when he wrestled Cody Rhodes, it was right at the beginning of the AEW. And it kind of showcased, hey, these are your guys, right? These are your two guys. Yep. And I think that is a huge piece of his career. And so I don't know if you want to touch on a couple matches that were your favorite of his.
Absolutely. We can go through some. I'll go from WCW, WWE, and then like some of the AEW ones that I found most compelling for me.
Mm-hmm.
In WCW, Fall Brawl 97 against Eddie Guerrero. Great match. A lot of one of their early work together. Like you said, it was kind of the boom of the cruiserweight division, and you kind of saw why with those two guys going at it.
Yep.
The next one I have a few in WWF, so I'm just going to choose like 3. So Triple H, Last Man Standing at Fully Loaded in 2000. I don't think this match gets a lot of play for some reason, but it's really one of the I think kind of a quintessential match for Jericho and sort of getting into like getting established as someone to be taken seriously in the WWF.
Mm-hmm.
And that match with Triple H was just really fantastic. A lot of the spots that they did in there, I think, were really creative. Obviously, Stephanie was involved, and that's just always fun. Then I have the ladder match with Chris Benoit. I know people don't like hearing his name, but the match itself is really good. And it was for the Intercontinental title. Those two always were really good together. But that was just like at the time, like they weren't just doing like random ladder matches at pay-per-views. Like that was usually saved for maybe like a WrestleMania or something. So the fact that it was happening at the Royal Rumble felt like a big deal. So I thought that was a great match. And I know we talked about Michaels. I want to talk about Rey Mysterio because him and Rey Mysterio in 2009, I'd say, had just a series of matches. And so I'm kind of lumping them all together, right, for people to check out. It's Judgment Day, Extreme Rules, and The Bash. Not the Great American Bash, but The Bash. I don't know. They had a whole thing at that time. They just wanted to shorten everything. But it was for the Intercontinental title. A lot of like mask versus title matches that they did here. Really some of his best work as like almost like a veteran guy in WWE at that time, and a lot of Rey Mysterio's best work too. So those are my WWE ones. And then I'll just pick 2 here. The Cody match in AEW at Full Gear 2019. The infamous stipulation that's just wasn't ended up being like really screwing Cody at his time in AEW. Like we never should have had this. But that and John Moxley at Revolution, that 2020 match that they had. That you talked about guys that he made, and I really think it's understated what he did for John Moxley in that position too, because of how well they work together. I think that Moxley didn't necessarily need all that much help. He was already kind of a main event guy. He was a multiple time champion in WWE before he came over, but I really think that match helped him a lot.
Sure.
Those are the matches.
Honestly, a lot of those matches I also agree with. I still think one of my favorites is the Shawn Michaels one at WrestleMania. But I would agree with pretty much all of those matches. It's hard not to, man. Like I had almost all of those on mine. But you could name a bunch of others if you really, really wanted to, and put it up there. I mean, the guy has wrestled everybody. It's hard to be like, right. All right, there's a lot of people you're like, man, I wish this person wrestled this person. Like, I find it hard. Who would a Jericho dream match be against? He's wrestled them all. Like, who is it against?
Oh my gosh, I think geez, you know what's coming to mind now? He even has a match against Finn Balor when they did a random special when they were in like Japan once. It was like Beast from the East. And I'm pretty sure Finn Balor faces him in that match. They face each other. And that's like I don't know. It's just so good. It
Yeah,
might
I
not have been
mean,
that. It might have been like a Raw or something, but I know that they face each other. It was just,
it's
man,
hard to
he was
pinpoint
everywhere.
someone.
He faced everyone.
Yeah,
That's another part
and
of his legacy. Like the guys he worked. What a spectrum of talent.
I know, I know. So it's hard to even say, all right, well, here's my dream match. He's wrestled everybody, man. It's listen, if you're listening and you think of someone that we're missing out there,
Oh God,
please,
yeah,
please
please.
throw it in the comments here because I would love to know. I don't know who we're missing. Did he wrestle Flair? He had to have.
Yeah, yeah.
He had
Oh,
to have.
hey, dude, funny story. I was there when he fought Flair. It was at
So okay,
SummerSlam 2002, Nassau Coliseum, baby.
yeah,
Me and my sister. Shout out Christina. Yeah, we were there. Got to watch
yeah.
that.
So
It was
there you
awesome.
go. Like, how do you? He's no. What about Hogan? Did he wrestle Hogan?
I think he did.
He
I think
had
he
to have
did.
at
I
some
think it
point
was
in
a
his career.
SmackDown, but
Yeah,
it was like that first draft round when they did it. I think that was one of the matches.
yeah. Again, I don't
What
know
didn't
who
he
he
do?
has in wrestle. Yeah, what didn't he do? Yeah, no, I now as we move forward into his career now, I definitely he has to be at the twilight of his career, and I'm hoping that he does come back to WWE.
Hmm.
For all of you watching, the Royal Rumble is tonight. There's rumors he's supposed to be there. I thought he was going to come back a few weeks ago. I was wrong. But it would be nice to see him come back and kind of finish up his career in WWE.
Hmm.
I think if you look at his career as a whole, WWE is his home. I know he started in WCW. I just don't think they gave him what he needed there. I think his real home is WWE. It's where he elevated his career. It's where he made himself. And
Sure.
I think there are people in WWE that he could face here. That would be really great. Him versus Dom Mysterio would be awesome.
Oh, that would be so much fun.
Yeah, him
That would be
versus
so much
Dom.
fun.
You got Braun Breaker, Logan Paul would be a cool match. I mean, there's a whole slew of new people. I don't remember him facing Seth Rollins, but I'm sure it happened. It had to
Maybe
have
it did.
happened.
Yeah.
Probably before his real big push, but
Hmm.
I would love to see that again if it didn't happen. You can
Hmm.
do some nostalgia runs. I'd love to see him against CM Punk again. That would be
I think they'll
awesome.
do that.
What's
They'll
that?
do a
Oh, they'll
couple of these.
definitely do that.
They'll do a few.
But I don't know that he needs to have a full John Cena like retirement tour. But I would love to see one more run in him in WWE. I think he would bring a lot to the table there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I hate to speak with such certainty, especially in wrestling, when we know that how often we're wrong.
Yeah,
But I just believe he's gonna be back. I think, you know, looking at the countdown behind me, right? The countdown on his career is on. All right. It's gonna reach it's gonna reach zero soon. So I think before that countdown is over, he's back and he has some level of a run with WWE again. And I'm
um,
looking forward to it. If it happens today, I will be very excited. As we're
we
recording this today, it is January 31st. It's the day of the Rumble.
yeah. So we talked about all the characters he had, but which one is your favorite?
It's like asking who your favorite child is, you know? It's just a real Sophie's choice you're giving me here. It's tough because I think whenever I think of Jericho, I always go back to how I first remember him, which is what we all do, right? It's very
Yeah,
human nature. You go back to that first time. So I think of the Y2J,
yeah.
undisputed Jericho, King of the World Jericho. Uh, that always holds a special place in my heart. But other ones that I appreciate are, the list. That aspect of Jericho, and he's walking around with the scarf,
Yeah.
and it's,
You just made the
it's
list.
one some of his best work. And
Raw,
the Le Champion gimmick in AEW,
that's
I
a good
actually
one.
enjoyed that.
I would tell you mine's probably the Millennium Y2J, right?
Yeah.
It just like, Raw is Jericho. I would tell
Mhm.
you for today, strutting from Gorilla is Jericho. And we should have
We
opened
are
the segment
Jericho.
with that.
Oh
But
yeah. Damn, we
but
missed out.
but I would also tell you, I still think it's the most underrated is Lionheart, Chris Jericho in WCW, and I
Okay. See.
think you need to go back and watch that because I think you'll see how how he kind of morphed and brought
Mhm.
along. It kind of started with the Goldberg stuff, like that is really where Y2J came from, and it really kind of just came into WWE. So that's what I would say with that. And I think, kind of putting a bow on this, we could probably talk about him forever. But I would say the legacy that Y2J leaves is a bit unique. I think it's really about how to recreate yourself. And we talked about that. But like, I think he can run a masterclass on how to do that. And if you ask him about it, I remember listening to the Stone Cold podcast and he talked about things that he did. He changes his hair. He, changes his music. He does this. Like
Mhm.
he always has a rhyme to his reason. And even like his hair color, he talked about doing that, or the way he styles his hair. So I think that's the type of legacy he leaves. And I also think he leaves a legacy of, being able to kind of pass it forward, right? Like, I think there's not a lot of, I think in wrestling, it's kind of a time honored tradition to be able to pass it forward. But I'm not sure many people have done it to the level that Chris Jericho does in how he brings up the younger talent around him rather than kind of picking and choosing who he faces. Like you hear it all the time. Brock Lesnar doesn't want to face this guy. He doesn't think, I think Jericho would say, yeah, bring him, let's do this. Right. So, and I think that shouldn't go unnoticed.
That's right. And never forget that he did, speaking of Brock Lesnar, he did the opposite Brock Lesnar tour. It's what he called it, the anti-Lesnar tour, where he worked all the house shows and he didn't work any live events.
That's awesome.
He did that a few years ago. Well, a couple of years before he went to AEW.
That's funny.
So,
Did he ever, did Jericho ever face Lesnar?
I
He had to.
I don't know. I don't know.
He
Maybe,
had to have.
I want to say if it was gonna happen, it might have been King of the Ring 02, but I think that was Lesnar and RVD in the finals.
Yeah.
I think RVD beat Jericho and then fought Lesnar, but I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to look that one up when we're done.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Well, I mean, I feel like after us talking about Jericho, nobody that has listened to this episode will ever be the same again. And I don't know about you, Vito, but I'm so glad that we got to take this little stroll down
Yeah.
memory lane with Jericho. It reminds you how much you liked him. I think you lose sight of that sometimes because you just like, you know, time
You do.
changes and so it's nice to go back and appreciate those moments that you get with those performers and Jericho's someone who left a real mark on all of us. So I'm I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. I hope he comes back today and we can talk more about it on our next episode. So any other final thoughts before we break the walls down on this thing?
I got nothing. Oh, actually, I guess I would say this. If he comes back, what entrance theme does he use? He has to go with Y2J.
I think he
that
goes
is
original. I
you
think he goes
got
original
to.
because
You
it's
got
it's
to.
that it's gonna be like you mentioned where they are. They're in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia loves nostalgia, and also for the reintroduction to the fans, there's gonna be some people that aren't familiar with him. So you want to use the most familiar thing you got,
Yeah.
and the countdown will be the thing. So
I hope
hey,
it
maybe he comes
happens.
out as number one, and they just started off like that,
No, well, according to
But
the internet, it's going to be Braun Breaker because they screwed up last night on SmackDown. Did you see that?
well, I don't know about that.
Maybe that's the
well,
little
let's just
Triple
wait
H
till they see it.
swerve.
And who do you think that they wouldn't change it then if it really
Yeah, I don't
screwed
know.
up? If I were them, I'd be like, well, great. So now we're gonna fuddle it around because everybody thinks that we screwed it up, which we might have. So,
Yeah. All right.
all right. Well, thank you everybody for listening and coming along for this little ride and talking about Chris Jericho. Let us know what you think. What are some of your favorite Jericho memories? Scan that QR code, find us on the socials, and let us know. But until next time, keep on strutting, jabronis.